Family, let me tell you something today. Waiting is not God's way of wasting your time. Waiting is God's way of working on your trust. We live in a culture that wants everything now. Instant answers, instant blessings, instant breakthroughs. But God is not in a hurry because he's not just interested in getting you out of something. He's interested in shaping who you become through it. Some of us are waiting on a door to open. Others are waiting on healing, direction, restoration, or provision. And the question we ask is, God, where are you? But heaven is not silent. God is strategic. When God puts you in a waiting season, it's because he's preparing you for what you've been praying for. You see, if the blessing shows up before your character is ready, the blessing can break you instead of bless you. The Bible tells us that those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. That means waiting is not passive. Waiting is active faith. It's choosing to trust God when the clock keeps ticking and nothing seems to change. Waiting seasons expose what we really believe. When the prayer isn't answered yet, when the promise seems delayed, when the situation looks unchanged, do we still worship? Do we still obey? Do we still trust? God often does his deepest work in the dark, unseen places. Just like a seed buried in the ground, nothing appears to be happening, but life is being formed. And when the time is right, God will bring it forth, right on schedule. So don't rush God. Don't quit in the waiting. Don't take shortcuts that compromise your faith. The same God who made the promise is faithful to fulfill it. And when the waiting season is over, you'll discover that God didn't just change your situation, he changed you. Waiting is not wasted time, even though it often feels that way to us. In a world that values speed, progress, and visible results, waiting can feel like standing still while everything else moves forward. But from God's perspective, waiting is never empty. It is a season filled with purpose, intention, and divine activity. When God allows waiting, he is not ignoring you, delaying out of forgetfulness, or withholding something out of cruelty. He is working in ways that cannot always be seen on the surface. One of the greatest misunderstandings about waiting is assuming that nothing is happening because nothing is changing around us. We tend to measure God's work by external movement, open doors, answered prayers, visible breakthroughs. But God often works internally before he works externally. While you are waiting, God is shaping your heart, refining your motives, and strengthening your faith. The silence does not mean absence. It means God is doing a deeper work that cannot be rushed. Waiting reveals who or what we truly trust. When answers come quickly, faith is easy. But when the timeline stretches and the solution is delayed, our trust is tested. Do we trust God only when he moves according to our schedule? Or do we trust him because of who he is? Waiting strips away our self-reliance and exposes our dependence. It teaches us to lean on God rather than our own strength, plans, or connections. Waiting also teaches patience, a quality that cannot be developed overnight. Patience is formed when we are forced to endure uncertainty without losing hope. In waiting seasons, God slows us down so we learn to listen, pray, and discern rather than rush ahead. Many mistakes are made when people refuse to wait, taking shortcuts, forcing doors open, or settling for less than what God intended. Waiting protects us from stepping into situations we are not ready to handle. There is also growth in humility during the waiting season. When things are out of our control, we are reminded that we are not the ones in charge. Waiting humbles us by reminding us that God's plans are bigger than our timelines. It teaches us to surrender our need to control outcomes and trust the wisdom of God's process. This humility prepares us to steward future blessings with gratitude rather than pride. Waiting strengthens spiritual endurance. Faith that has never been tested is faith that has never been proven. When you continue to pray, obey, and believe, even when you don't see results, your faith gains depth and resilience. You learn how to stand firm when emotions fluctuate and circumstances remain unchanged. This kind of faith does not collapse under pressure because it has been refined in the waiting. God also uses waiting to realign our desires. Sometimes what we think we want is not what we truly need. In the waiting season, God clarifies our purpose and adjusts our priorities. He may remove distractions, unhealthy attachments, or misplaced expectations. By the time the waiting season ends, what you want often looks different from what you originally asked for because your heart has been reshaped. Waiting prepares us to recognize and appreciate God's timing. When the answer finally comes, we understand that it arrived not too late and not too early, but at the exact moment it was meant to. Looking back, we often see that if God had answered sooner, we would not have been ready to handle the responsibility, pressure, or weight of the blessing. The waiting season proves that God knows what we need and when we need it. In the end, waiting is not about inactivity, it is about preparation. God uses the waiting season to build strength, deepen trust, and develop character. What feels like delay is often divine development. While we wait, God works, ensuring that when the next season begins, we are equipped not just to receive the blessing, but to sustain it. God is not punishing you when he asks you to wait. That assumption often rises from pain, disappointment, or repeated delays that feel personal. When prayers go unanswered and doors remain closed, it is easy to believe that God is displeased or withholding something because of failure or lack. But waiting is rarely about punishment, it is about preparation. God's delays are intentional, not emotional reactions to our imperfections. If punishment were the goal, grace would not be present, and God's patience would not endure. Preparation means God is working ahead of what you can see. He prepares people before he releases purpose, because purpose without preparation produces pressure instead of promise. Many blessings carry weight, responsibility, visibility, influence, or spiritual opposition. If those things arrive before maturity, they can overwhelm rather than uplift. Waiting is God's way of strengthening your foundation so that what he gives you will not collapse your faith or distort your character. In preparation, God often works on internal alignment. He shapes attitudes, corrects motives, and challenges assumptions. What we ask for may be right, but our reasons for wanting it may still need refining. God is concerned not only with what you do, but why you do it. In the waiting season, selfish ambition is confronted, pride is softened, and dependence on God is deepened. This internal work is essential because external success without internal integrity eventually leads to spiritual erosion. God also uses waiting to teach discernment. Preparation requires learning when to move and when to stay still. In seasons of delay, we learn to recognize God's voice over our impulses and emotions. We become more sensitive to direction rather than driven by desperation. This discernment protects us from confusing opportunity with assignment. Not every open door is from God, and not every closed door is rejection. Waiting trains us to trust God's guidance more than our own urgency. Preparation includes developing endurance. The future God is preparing you for may demand perseverance beyond what you currently possess. Waiting stretches your capacity to endure disappointment without losing faith. It teaches you how to remain consistent in prayer, obedience, and integrity when rewards are not immediate. Endurance built in waiting becomes strength and fulfillment. When challenges arise later, you will not be easily shaken because you have already learned how to stand firm. God also prepares relationships during waiting seasons. Sometimes the delay has less to do with you and more to do with others involved in the promise. God may be aligning people, healing wounds, or shifting circumstances behind the scenes. Preparation is often collective, not just individual. What God is orchestrating may require timing that involves multiple lives intersecting at the right moment. Waiting allows God to bring those pieces together without force or manipulation. Waiting exposes areas that need healing. God does not want unresolved pain, fear, or insecurity to follow you into the next season. Preparation includes emotional and spiritual restoration. If God were to move you forward without healing what's beneath the surface, old wounds would shape new decisions. Waiting creates space for reflection, repentance, forgiveness, and renewal, so that the next season is entered whole rather than wounded. Preparation also builds gratitude. When something is delayed and finally arrives, appreciation deepens. Waiting teaches you not to take blessings lightly. It changes entitlement into thankfulness. This gratitude becomes protection against pride and complacency. When you recognize how much God has invested in preparing you, you steward his blessings with humility and care. God's preparation is never random or excessive. He knows exactly how much time is needed to shape you for what is ahead. What feels like delay is divine investment. God is not holding you back. He is building you up. When the waiting season ends, you will discover that God was not punishing you at all. He was preparing you to walk confidently, faithfully, and fruitfully into what he had planned all along. Waiting requires active faith because trust in God is not proven by what we say when things are going well, but by how we live when answers are delayed. Active faith means we continue to believe even when we do not see immediate results. It is the decision to stand on God's promises while circumstances remain unchanged. Waiting exposes the difference between believing God can do something and trusting him enough to remain faithful when he hasn't done it yet. Active faith refuses to shut down spiritually during the waiting season. It keeps praying even when the prayers feel repetitive and the heavens seem quiet. Prayer and waiting is not about convincing God to act faster. It is about aligning our hearts with his will. When we continue to pray while waiting, we declare that God is still worthy of our trust, even without visible proof of progress. That kind of faith deepens our relationship with God beyond transactional expectations. Obedience is another expression of active faith. It is easy to obey God when obedience leads to immediate reward, but waiting tests whether we will obey without guarantees. Active faith says, I will still do what is right, even if it doesn't change my situation today. This kind of obedience is powerful because it demonstrates trust in God's character, not just his outcomes. It acknowledges that God is good, even when his goodness is not immediately visible. Active faith also requires consistency. Waiting seasons can tempt people to give up, pull back, or become spiritually inconsistent. But faith remains active when we continue to worship, serve, and live with integrity despite the delay. Worship during waiting is especially significant because it shifts focus away from what we lack and places it on who God is. When we worship without receiving what we ask for, we declare that God himself is enough. Active faith involves choosing hope over frustration. Waiting can create emotional tension, disappointment, and doubt. Faith does not deny these feelings, but it refuses to let them take control. Instead of allowing frustration to harden into bitterness, active faith leans into hope. Hope is not wishful thinking. It is confident expectation rooted in God's faithfulness. By choosing hope, we guard our hearts from cynicism and despair. Active faith also means resisting the urge to take shortcuts. Waiting can make quick fixes look appealing, but shortcuts often lead to compromise. Active faith trusts that God's way, though slower, is safer and more fulfilling. It refuses to manipulate situations, force outcomes, or settle for alternatives that fall short of God's best. Waiting faithfully requires courage because it means trusting God's timing over our own urgency. Another aspect of active faith is perseverance in truth. Waiting seasons often attract discouraging voices, both internal and external. Doubts question whether God heard us, whether we misunderstood the promise, or whether waiting is pointless. Active faith responds by holding tightly to truth rather than emotions. It reminds itself of what God has already done and who he has already proven himself to be. Faith feeds on remembrance, not circumstances. Active faith grows stronger through surrender. Waiting teaches us to release control and trust God with outcomes we cannot predict. This surrender is not passive resignation, it is confident reliance on God's wisdom. By surrendering our timelines and expectations, we allow God to work freely without pressure from our demands. Faith becomes active when we stop trying to manage results and start trusting God to handle them. Waiting seasons refine faith into something durable. Faith that has never been stretched is fragile, but faith that remains active during waiting becomes resilient. It learns to stand without constant reassurance. It trusts without needing immediate validation. When the waiting season ends, active faith emerges stronger, deeper, and more anchored in God than before. God places greater value on who you are becoming than how quickly you arrive. Speed may satisfy impatience, but character sustains destiny. Many people want God to move fast, yet God is more concerned with making you ready. When blessings come faster than character development, they often expose weaknesses rather than produce fruit. What looks like progress on the outside can become destruction on the inside if the heart has not been shaped to handle it. Character is formed over time, not in moments. It develops through consistent choices, repeated obedience, and endurance under pressure. Waiting creates the environment where character can grow because it removes shortcuts and forces reflection. In waiting seasons, God reveals attitudes that need correction: pride, entitlement, fear, or impatience. These things are often hidden when life is moving quickly, but delay brings them to the surface so they can be addressed. God understands that the size of the assignment determines the depth of preparation required. Greater responsibility demands stronger character. Influence without integrity leads to compromise. Authority without humility leads to abuse. Visibility without maturity leads to instability. Waiting slows us down so God can strengthen our inner life before expanding our outer impact. He knows that if character is weak, speed only accelerates failure. Waiting teaches faithfulness in small things. When nothing dramatic is happening, we learn to be consistent without applause. Character is proven when we do the right thing even when no one is watching and nothing seems to be changing. These quiet moments shape discipline, integrity, and perseverance. God watches how we handle the ordinary before entrusting us with the extraordinary. What we do in the waiting reveals whether we can be trusted in the fulfillment. Character also grows through disappointment. Waiting often includes unmet expectations and deferred hopes. How we respond to those moments matters. Do we become bitter, or do we remain teachable? Do we withdraw, or do we press deeper into faith? Disappointment can either harden the heart or refine it. God allows delay not to break us, but to teach us how to respond well when life does not go as planned. Humility is a key component of character shaped in waiting. When progress is slow, pride has little room to grow. Waiting reminds us that we are dependent on God, not our own ability or timing. It teaches us to submit rather than demand, to trust rather than control. Humility learned in waiting becomes protection in seasons of success, keeping us grounded when things finally move forward. Waiting also exposes our motivations. Sometimes we want results more than responsibility, platforms more than purpose, or outcomes more than obedience. Delay forces us to examine why we want what we're asking for. God refines these motives so that when the answer comes, it serves his purposes rather than feeding our ego. Character ensures that what God gives us is used wisely and selflessly. Speed can produce excitement, but character produces endurance. Quick results may feel rewarding, but they rarely last without a solid foundation. Character allows you to remain steady when pressure increases, criticism arises, or challenges intensify. Waiting seasons build emotional and spiritual stability, teaching you how to remain anchored when circumstances shift. God is not impressed by how fast you can get somewhere if you cannot stay there. Character determines sustainability. Waiting ensures that when doors finally open, you can walk through them without losing your faith, values, or integrity. What God is building in you during the waiting season matters more than how long it takes, because character is what carries the promise long after the waiting is over. God's timing is perfect, even when it feels delayed. One of the most difficult lessons in life is learning to trust that God is not early, He is not late, He is always on time. Human impatience often interprets delay as denial, but God's sense of timing operates on a completely different level than ours. What feels like waiting or frustration to us is often a carefully orchestrated preparation period for what is coming. God's schedule is not random. It is deliberate, precise, and aligned with His plan for your life. Divine timing ensures that everything arrives at the right moment, not a second too soon and not a second too late. If God answered every prayer immediately without delay, we might not be ready to handle the blessing. Timing protects us from consequences we cannot foresee and positions us to receive what He has promised fully and wisely. Just as a farmer plants a seed and waits for the proper season of growth and harvest, God allows things to unfold in His timing so that results are complete and sustainable. Patience is cultivated in the waiting because we learn to trust God's timing more than our own. It is easy to take matters into our own hands when impatience sets in. Acting prematurely can lead to mistakes, misdirection, and lost opportunities. When we wait on God, we allow Him to coordinate circumstances, people, and resources according to His perfect plan. Every delay, every pause, and every season of uncertainty serves a purpose in the broader tapestry of God's design. Waiting on God's timing also builds appreciation for the answered prayer or fulfilled promise. When something comes too quickly, it can be taken for granted. When it comes in God's perfect time, it is recognized as an act of divine faithfulness. We are more likely to honor, steward, and cherish what is received because we understand that it was worth the wait. God's timing cultivates gratitude, which strengthens our hearts and deepens our relationship with Him. Timing also aligns blessings with readiness. God knows the season you are in and the season that is coming. He positions people, prepares resources, and coordinates events to ensure that the outcome is fruitful. When we trust God's timing, we step into what He has prepared without unnecessary struggle or wasted effort. God's timing is never arbitrary. It is synchronized with our spiritual growth, emotional maturity, and life circumstances to maximize the impact of His promises. Faith grows when we rely on God's timing rather than forcing our own. Trusting God's clock strengthens our confidence in His wisdom and sovereignty. We learn that God's understanding far exceeds our own, and that His delays are never signs of neglect or indifference. Each waiting period becomes an opportunity to deepen reliance on His faithfulness, knowing that He is orchestrating every detail for our ultimate good, divine. Timing also teaches discernment. While we wait, we learn to recognize God's voice and distinguish it from our own impulses. We develop sensitivity to His leading and learn to discern which opportunities align with His plan. Patience allows us to act decisively when God signals the moment has arrived, rather than acting prematurely and compromising the promise. Finally, trusting God's timing reinforces.
Loving you alone feels so beautiful. And yet, it hurts the most. You became my quiet sunrise, the dream I never dared to say. Every smile you gave so freely took my breath a little away. I held this love like fragile glass, so precious, soft and true. But every beat inside my heart was only reaching out to you. Unspoken love is sweet and painful, like honey mixed mixed with rain, a tender hope I hold so tightly, while it slowly breaks me. Loving you from just one side now leaves my soul in silent blue. 'Cause the deeper that I fall alone, the lonelier I do. I can't blame my heart for choosing someone it could never keep. So I smile through hidden heartache and love you quietly. Unspoken love is sweet and painful, like honey mixed with rain, a tender hope I hold so tightly, while it slowly breaks me. Loving you from just one side now leaves my soul in silent blue. 'Cause the deeper that I fall alone, the lonelier I do. Maybe loving you in silence is the closest I can stay, though it leaves behind a sorrow that may never fade away. Unspoken love is sweet and painful, like honey mixed with rain, a tender hope I hold so tightly, while it slowly breaks me. Loving you from just one side now leaves my soul in silent blue. 'Cause the deeper that I fall alone, the lonelier I do.